Welcome back, Nuggets. Let's dive into the 48-hour whirlwind that is the GMTK Game Jam that happened past weekend. Just like the previous year, I called up my partner in crime and best friend Roy, and we committed ourselves to the fun activity of creating a game from scratch in 48 hours. And this year's theme threw us a bit of a curveball. Roles reversed.
Your goal over the next 48 hours is to make a game that fits the following theme.
So buckle up as I take you on a ride through the ups, the downs, and behind the scenes of our game. What we ended up with, how we got there, and what two grizzled game developers with over 30 years of combined experience still can learn. But before I get into the gritty details, let's see what the fuss is about. Say hello to Stacked Warriors, our quirky twist on a classic brawler game. Meet our pint-sized heroes Kaylin and Dalen, who are constantly overlooked in the character select screen due to their small stature. So they hatch a plan to team up, fight atop each other's shoulders, and teach everyone a not-so-small lesson. How did we translate the roles reversed theme into our game? Well, we decided to make two different roles to play. One of the attacker and one of the walker or dodger. Our dynamic duo Kaylin and Dalen each have their strengths and weaknesses. Dalen is quick and relies on melee combat, while Kaylin takes a slower pace because Dalen is very heavy and excels at ranged attacks. To make swapping roles a core mechanic and not just a side gimmick, we designed enemies that could only be defeated by either ranged or melee attacks, like my personal favorite, Bull. But there's more. We cranked up the tension by adding stamina and strength bars. These bars gradually deplete during actions, with the inactive action bar for each character slowly refilling. It's all about the balance. Of course, with a 40-hour time constraint, we had to be picky with our ideas. And so we opted to create an endless brawler. But what is a brawler without a proper boss fight? We wanted every player to experience the boss fight. So once your character dies or gets knocked out, the boss revives you for an epic showdown. It's all part of the narrative. A knight seeking the most formidable opponent to test his strength and his new set of armor. Even our knight flaunts a bit of role reversal by donning a female character's armor. Quite fitting, don't you think? So, feeling pumped to try it out? Well, you're in luck. There's a link in the description of this video down below where you can play the game yourself. Is it perfect? No. We've received some feedback that the controls can be a bit challenging and perhaps we could have spent more time refining them, but just look at it. When you've got arguably the best pixel artist from the Netherlands on your team, your game is bound to look stunning. Our start on day one was shaky at best. We wasted a ton of time on a bad idea. And so here's a first tip. If you're stuck on an idea, just drop it. In a 48-hour game jam, there's just no time for concepts that don't spark creativity or joy. So if you're struggling to envision what the game would be, it's better off discarded. We finally settled on a two-character brawler and focused on just making a fun game. And with this decision made at 23:23 at night, we only had 3 hours left to make our first playable version. As I mentioned, Roy is a phenomenal pixel artist, and we decided to make the game 2.5D with stunning pixel art. Here, though, we made our first oversight. Although the game looks fantastic, we should have opted for smaller, less detailed sprites. We suspect that this would have allowed us to double our content, so keep that in mind for your next jam. The character movement and swapping mechanics were easy enough to implement, but we hit a bit of a snag when we tried to devise a system to move the levels. We couldn't get the camera movement quite right, so to cover up most of the transition we employed a significant camera movement. Despite spending a good 2 hours trying to fix it in the morning, we just had to let it go and focus on other things. In a jam, sometimes you just have to accept things as they are. The second day was mainly about wrapping up and infusing our first playable with more art and content. A brawler wouldn't be a brawler without enemies, so we needed some opposition. I began with the most basic enemy, one that walks towards you and throws a punch. If you retreat, they pursue you. Rinse and repeat. This gave us the idea of having enemies that could only be damaged by either Kaylin or Dalen. Next we added an enemy for Kaylin to slay, a mage, and also one who shoots his own projectiles. While Roy was crafting beautiful pixel art for all that, it was time to implement the game flow, a way to start, die and restart. Basically everything that turns a level into a game. As the game started to come together, we started to polish the game, adding more particles, more bounces, more screen shake, more juice, and of course, sound effects. Creating sound is one of the areas Roy and I are lacking in, so we decided to download some free chiptune music and use SFXR to make sound effects. In the end, I think it sounds pretty good. If by now you have played the game, then you might feel that the boss fight feels a little tagged on. That's because it is. I actually had no plan on making the boss fight at all. It was the third day, we only had a few hours left and we had still a ton of work to do. But then again, a boss fight is pretty epic. I quickly cobbled together a rough boss fight. The boss fight was just a giant mix of all the other enemies. And while Roy was working on the art and finalizing the boss, we hit crunch time, smoothing out bugs and balancing the game. The game jam clock was ticking fast, leaving us with almost no time to playtest. Then, things started going south. When we tried to upload our game to itch, it just wouldn't work. But the editor didn't show any errors, so I started bug hunting. 1 hour went by, 2 hours went by, 3 hours went by. I slowly started losing it. Finally, after about 10 builds, I found the problem. It was an issue with Unity's setup that led to a dead end. Just moving one tiny variable from the start to the awake function fixed everything. A simple fix that cost us 3 hours. So here's the next tip: don't wait until the final hour to upload your game. If that is something that we would have done, then we would have ended the jam with nothing to show for. Thankfully, we still had about 6 hours before the deadline, and we had some time to polish the game, add a simple tutorial and squash a few more bugs. But as the deadline came closer, more and more bugs kept showing up, and all in the last hour. Levels deleted themselves, the bull was positioned wrong, the music wouldn't loop, and the players could walk off the map. In the final hour, I had to rebuild the game about 20 more times, and at exactly 1 minute and 20 seconds left, we were done. What a crazy weekend and what an unforgettable experience. Roy and I are incredibly proud of what we managed to make in 48 hours, and it was also my big dream to make a brawler, so I'm really happy that we were able to create something like this in such a short time frame. Now again, if you want to give it a try, click that link in the description down below to take you to the itch page. And if you still can, if you're watching this within the rating period, why not rate our game as well for the jam? That was a really nice sidestep. But now, back to developing Wrenched again. As always, I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.